Hello, Comm 101 students. As you are heading into the final speeches for the quarter, I just wanted to meet with you briefly and run through some things, probably some things that your IAs have already been talking to you about in your small groups. But it always helps just to repeat, to reiterate, and make sure that you have the opportunity to ask some clarifying questions if you have them. But a couple things we'll get out of the way first, and that is that some discussion items I think we should talk about. So if you had your topic justification returned to you because I just said I need more information or not yet approved or topics too broad or whatever, then you're the one I really want to see resubmit as soon as possible, or Zoom with me or email me if you have some concerns, so we can make sure that you have a really good final speech topic and plan going in, okay? And then your outlines, you are going to submit those on Canvas just like you have been. They have to go through the VeriCite process. And oftentimes, as we've struggled with a little bit this quarter, I think, are some issues with formatting as well as references and citations. So please, please look at your handbook and look at the examples, and we'll go over some of the details. But it really is, at this point, up to you to follow the outlines that we've given you this quarter. It's going to be a tremendous help to you. Okay, turn this here. All right. And then late work, of course, you know, we do have the policy, late policy for the class. So if you want to get partial points for something, you are going to have to make sure you turn that in within 48 hours and that it's no later than that, because then any assignment becomes a 0. And your IAs, I'm sure, have talked to you about, you know, your speeches have to be uploaded, but so do your outlines, and everything all has to work together. Okay, so let's get on top of the late work if you could. And then attendance is just keep going to your small groups. If you haven't been going and you can benefit from that heading into the persuasives, then please visit those small groups. All of you should have outlines that you're going to submit to your IA or IAs anyway. And so you want to make sure you stay up on top of that. And then Canvas, of course, will have your exam grades. So I think you have exam 2 still to take, if I'm right about that. But either way, your exam grades should be up on Canvas. And remember, Canvas isn't a great place to find grades, like a total grade, because there are certain things that have to figure into that algorithm that we just don't have. And then, you know, when you do upload something, you should be able to see, I can see for sure, and your IAs can see, but you should be able to see the plagiarism if you have some parts that maybe didn't get cited properly, or they didn't get cited at all, or you didn't even use a source, because those are things that will be very serious issues, and especially at Western. And I really don't want either one of us to have to spend time with the registrar's office trying to get through what happens when we plagiarize here at Western. If you are struggling with things and you still need some help, you're not quite sure about the quarter, whatever it might be, I know that resources have been put in place, maybe not enough, but call the Office of Student Life at 3706 extension. It's on the campus there. If you need anything, that's why they're there even now while we're not in class. Okay, so having covered those few things, chapter 15 is your foundations of persuasive speaking, right? And so that's what we're primarily going to talk about. I'm just going to highlight some things. Again, you have your handbook, you have your IAs, you have your outlines, you know what you need to do by now. But persuasion, which is much different than what we've been talking about with your informatives, is the process of converting, modifying, or maintaining the attitudes and or behavior of others. So we could, and you know, maybe we don't believe what you believe about something, and it's your job to try to get us to at least understand, right, or at least see your side. And maintaining certain attitudes or modifying, even maybe they're just certain things we need to change. You know, we'll look at a couple examples maybe of how you could modify your speech or what you want from the audience, as well as maintaining certain attitudes or behaviors of others. Maybe there are things that you think you're slipping away, you know, or we're not doing so well on, or that people could be doing better. Recycling, for example. Then we know that that's a good thing to do, but we might need you to help us maintain those same thoughts and behaviors through a persuasive speech. Your attitude and their attitude have to be part of the focus as well. So it's a learned predisposition to respond favorably or unfavorably some attitude or object. And I think when we talked about this in your small groups there, and I've mentioned it in the topic justifications, is make sure that you are quite certain what it is you want from your audience. Is it an attitude thing? If so, then you're going to have to appeal to logic, emotion, those types of things. So think about persuasion that way. We really need to know, what is my audience's attitude? What do they think about this topic even? Do they care? And what position are they likely to take? All those things are what we kind of ask ourselves, right? While we're planning. So here's an example, a cartoon, I guess, trying to just make a point. Obviously, he knows he should quit smoking. And his friend said, well, then why don't you quit? He said, I should, maybe. I will someday. Well, so attitudes and behavior are not always consistent. And we find that a lot with folks. And if you are, depending on what your topic is, you might find that some people are very comfortable taking a stand on that topic and some people aren't. So sometimes our attitudes and our behaviors aren't consistent. And some of the reasons for attitude and behavior inconsistencies that you're trying to deal with as a persuasive speaker. And honestly, it doesn't mean, if you're a professional public speaker, or if you're doing it for a class session or what. I mean, you really have to think about what some of the reasons are for their attitudes and behaviors in the audience and what inconsistencies you might have to deal with. And we call this direct versus indirect experience. So maybe somebody has had experience with your topic directly or indirectly. Maybe social pressure would be reasons for noticing some attitude and behavior inconsistencies. I've seen this in the classroom for sure among students. And also, what's the effort going to be? What do I have to do? What's going to be required of me to enact something or to be part of the conversation? In other words, I'm going to move this because my window there. Okay. All right. So you get the picture of that. Some of the goals in a persuasion. So what is it you need to do? You need to be sure what your goal is. Your purpose helps you know what your goal is when you write your statement at the top, your thesis statement, the main idea, you have your attention getter. It should, all of that, and should tell us what your goals are. What is it you want? Today, I want to persuade you to stop throwing your trash in the recycle bin. Much different than today, I want you to tell you about how many items go into a recycle bin that should go into a trash can. That's informative. When I say I want to persuade you, I want to convince you, I want to reinforce in you, those are some goals. You're talking now, okay, now what do I want? So we can do a radical persuasion, radical conversion. So it could be something, take what's very popular right now, the COVID situation, and just say, we need to open up society again and wear face masks and let us get back to work. Modification, don't ask for the moon. You might say, I think more and more businesses that provide services to people should be opening. And so what are they? Is a hair salon different than a clothing store? I mean, we don't know. That's something you think about. Modification. How can we meet halfway? Maintenance, again, keep them coming back wanting the same thing, helping to, the maintenance part of something like that would be that we're all still social distancing, we're all still wearing face masks and those things. So I can, I could go 3 different ways, right, with that one topic. And so that's what you can do as well. And social judgment theory is a theory that you read about in your book. And just as a reminder, I'm kind of going over some of these basics so that you at least can get in your mind, what kind of speech am I writing? What are my goals? What is my purpose? How far can I get in my argument? And what's realistic? So the anchor let's look at this topic about the cost of college. So strongly agree. There's that anchor. Somebody says college should be free. And then you might agree, yes, I agree with that, but maybe minimal tuition fees can be charged because I don't think it's realistic for college to be free. And then someone who's indifferent and they say, I think public colleges should be supported by taxes. I don't think it's something we don't need to be worried about. I'm indifferent. I really don't care. But I think the government should be supported or should support public colleges. Students should pay entire cost, or students should pay at least 75% of cost. So you can see on the other end of that spectrum, And in your audience, somebody's going to think it should be free. Now, in this case, everybody may feel it should be free. But if somebody had done a study about it and they said, well, it sounds great, but it's really not realistic. I think students should pay entire cost, or at least 75% of the cost, because taxpayers don't need an extra burden. So you can see that people could run along the whole spectrum of whatever your argument is. And that's okay. That's okay. You just try to recognize this social judgment sort of spectrum here. Think about it in the back of your head. What can I realistically expect from my audience? Here's a topic. So here's a good example. Ban all guns. So that's at that very far end of the spectrum. And then we have the other one saying all guns should be legalized. All weapons should be legal. Okay, the opposite ends. Somewhere in the middle is, or what's realistic, maybe your argument to ban all guns isn't really realistic, right? Because people have First Amendment rights, people have just the freedom to do things that they legally qualify for, and they'll fight it. They will fight against it. However, couldn't you do a speech on how to that we should ban assault rifles? Now, who needs an assault rifle, right? So that might be where your argument is. So don't bite off that big chunk that's not realistic. Find a smaller chunk of it that is more realistic and could still satisfy you as a speaker and your persuasive argument as well. All right. And then there's what you read about called the elaboration likelihood model. So that offers two primary ways to persuasion. The central route, so skepticism can be in there. You have to use reasoning and evidence for them, right? You have to elaborate on these things with reasoning and evidence. People want to know that you've done your homework. And chances are you may not be the expert, even though you've chosen this topic, but there is a lot of expert information out there. Then we call the peripheral route. And that one is your likability, credibility, celebrity, physical attractiveness, body language cues. We see a lot of this in advertisement, which is intended to be very persuasive. Well, of course, they're going to have the right people and the right evidence and things that they need to sell their product or to sell their argument anyway. So these are two primary routes to doing that. Very important. You have to use reasoning and evidence, but it's just the way it is. It's kind of human nature that if you're likable, you'll seem more credible. If you're a celebrity, oh my gosh, of course, you must know everything, right? You're attractive, certain body language cues that make us look like we're authoritative, all of those types of things. And then usually if you're talking about those two, you can imagine how they work together, and they call that parallel processing. So you're using both the central and peripheral routes to persuasion. Very strong, very great approach to it. So this isn't necessarily just one way to organize it, but this is thinking about the content and what should that content do? What route should it take? Well, I think I want to be likable. I want to be credible. That's important. And so you're doing a combination of these things. And then counter persuasion. We talk about some of those things. I won't go over that slide, but appropriate evidence that you need. You have this counter argument that you risk getting from your audience, right? That they're not going to agree with you. And that's fine. That's fine. You need to recognize their point of view in your speech, but then you argue against that point of view and you argue why your position is stronger. And how do you do that? That evidence, the reasoning, making yourself likable, credible, speaking with authority, doing really good research and bringing in sources and citing those sources properly. Really, the audience finds that much more credible. All right, so you do need 5 sources minimum, 3 print, and then you need to come up with 2 more. So a little bit different than our other speeches. And just notice here, using a variety, nothing much has changed. And remember, you can find print online. It has to be a publication that is available in print or has been available in print. And it's not just simply somebody's personal website. So what do we look at? Journals, magazines, newspapers, books, pamphlets, interviews. They all work. They all work. Brochures even. No Wikipedia though, BuzzFeed, eHow, About, Daily Mail. And it's not that you can't use dictionaries and encyclopedias, but not as your 5 minimum, because We're really trying to show you how to have strong, legitimate sources that help to promote, build, or further your argument. And those are really not necessarily going to be able to do that. They're very descriptive in nature. All right, go beyond the Huffington Post, and one website only, remember, one.gov, one.edu, one.com, whatever that might be. Like I said, if there's a publication on there that's also in print, but you can download it from the internet, that's a different thing. That's much different. But if you're just citing stuff on their website, you can only have one. Ask if you're not sure. All right, ask, and then online articles can work, but check first just so you know you're on the right track. And there are outline and reference page examples on Canvas, so please, please take a look at that. All right, so in chapter 16, you're talking about persuasive speaking strategies. So we kind of have the core of how are we planning this. Now let's talk about some speaking strategies. And these are the things I was talking about. You're going to use different strategies, different appeals, enhance credibility, ethos. That's ethical kinds of, so somebody sees you as being credible or ethical. Bolster likability, develop stylistic similarities, note substantive similarities. That's what you're going to do. That's part of the ethical building credibility and support. Using persuasive arguments, logos, so using a lot of logic, fact, value, or claims of policy, all of those will help you develop and approach your topic or your audience with logic even. And then of course the third one is adding emotional appeals or the pathos. So you're going to be using either one, two, oftentimes most speeches are probably going to be a combination of two of them, maybe all three, right? You can see all three in there. Some are going to be a little bit more, emotional appeals are going to be more persuasive than logical, depending on what it is. In some speech topics, logical works. Having logical as the basis of your persuasive arguments works very well. So don't feel like you have to be tied into one or the other, or the third one, okay? And you know, that emotional appeal, fear or anger, either get us mad about something, make us afraid that if we don't do something, this will happen, you know, those types of things. Just creating that. And you don't have to do fear and anger all the time in your audience, but getting that emotional part of us to really think and want to do something to right or wrong or whatever it might be can be very powerful. Okay, so some of the appeals that we are looking at when we talk about strategies is 5 conditions for effectiveness. Let's say that you really do want to address the COVID-19 issue and that you feel that we are going to have even more and more illnesses and the pandemic's going to grow. So you have proof, you have to show that to us. A lot of people are hoping that it's not going to be the case, but then we're like, okay, what do you know? What did you find out about? And then they can make their own decisions. So when that would be a fear appeal, is why we need to understand that we can't let our guard down. So are you afraid? Is a specific recommendation provided? Is the recommendation perceived as effective? Can listeners perform the recommended action? And then the last one are high quality arguments provided. So you see, that's the question that you're going to wonder about your audience. Are you afraid enough? Are you concerned enough to do something? Was there a specific recommendation that I could have given you to help support or solve my problem? Is the recommendation perceived as effective? Well, if it's logical or emotionally effective, then it could be. But also, can your audience perform what you're asking them to do? You can't ask them to solve world hunger because, you know, they're not going to be able to do that, right? Not following your speech right away anyway, but they could be part of a bigger effort to do that. Are high quality arguments provided? Again, if you're going to use sources, and I always say this, when you have your source, don't just state a source and the information from it. Tell us why you chose that source. Apparently you chose it because you thought it would either be good for your argument, to promote your argument, or to refute the counter argument that you might get. So don't forget to, don't just throw your sources in there. Tell us why. So according to this article by so-and-so on such and such a date, you know, all those things you're supposed to do. You could say probably one of the first articles that ever dealt with what happens if we let our guard down during the pandemic. So you see, that's just an example, but you can see where I didn't just give you the source and what it said. I explain more about it and why I used it. And then I'm going to say, I agree with what the author says in here. And I hope you will too, because statistics show da, 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 da. So I am referring to my source. I'm talking about it. I'm not just throwing it in there because I was supposed to have 5. It will really, really help your argument. Think about it. Think about it. The more, when you're with your friends or with your family, I mean, more information, and your parents say, well, I need more information before I can decide. And you give them more information. Well, you're doing this because an audience has no way to stop and ask you to do it. So it's your job. And some other strategies is, you're going and you're shouting it and you're angry and you want support and you're out there and that's a visual aid that you can use. Here's another one, as it said, framing and language is important. How you frame something, the language we use, can bring out underlying meanings to things. So in this case is a funny example, or as we call it, alternative heaven. So you could see, if I tell you, oh, you want to come here because this is alternative heaven, sounds good, right? Sounds very good. So the way I framed it and the language I used made it sound a little more enjoyable to want to go to alternative heaven. All right. And then some of you have seen this, if not all of you have seen this in your small groups, but look at the words and look how different the different words to inform and persuade that you can use. So if I'm notifying, if I'm telling or enlightening you or advising you or demonstrating something or describing something, there's no persuasion there. But if I take some of that basic information and then I use it to encourage you, to influence the way you feel about something, to motivate you to go out and act, I plead for your help. I urge you to make a difference. Very different, very different. So use those words. In the topic justifications, I see a lot of, I want to inform my audience. Don't even start with that word, inform. Just don't even have it anywhere in your persuasive vocabulary for this. Having said that, oftentimes the first main point that you establish is credibility, the problem, what's out there about it, what do you know about it, what do you want to do about it, right? There is a little bit of informing going on, certainly, throughout a persuasive speech, but just don't let your language get there. It's up to you to use your language, to use your body language, your gestures, your voice, your face, and your words. And even like I am, how I am exaggerating my words and my inflection, that is how you persuade. I don't need to get that excited about it if I'm just informing you about something, unless I'm just really excited about it. So let all of those things show your persuasive argument and appeal. It's beyond just words. So we talk about a lot of different ways that you can organize your speech. A lot of you are going to either, you want people to think about something that maybe they haven't thought about before. You want to take a problem that has 2 sides and you want to refute one of the sides. You just want it, yours is more conducive to problem solution, or maybe problem cause solution. That's very popular. Those are both popular. And Monroe's motivated sequence, which is on page 143 and Appendix B. And there are different steps to Monroe's, and we'll go through them quickly, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them because I think we use Monroe's within a lot of these structures, but it is a process in and of itself, a sequence of its own. But think about it. Why does it make sense? Monroe's motivated sequence, which you should have all read about, is there's an attention step. Well, you already know you have to have an attention getter, right? A need. Why do they need to listen to you? Satisfaction step. What's in it for them? And then visualization step. Make them really see what changes can come of something. And then an action step. Do you want them to think about something, maintain the way they think or do something, or totally do something after your speech? You have to decide. So the introduction then, as you know, getting your audience's attention. And a lot of you have written outlines that didn't look a whole lot like outlines. So I really do encourage you to take some time at that introduction and write it out, so you know you have a really thorough, well-developed introduction that's going to lead you into a strong body of your speech, and we show you exactly how to wrap that up with a really strong conclusion, and you're just bringing everything full circle for your audience. So how to grab our attention, what's in it for us, why should we listen to you, what should we do, and how will you let us know your plan to persuade us? What are your main points? So you see we're doing that with attention getter, audience adaptation. Why should we listen to you? Your purpose is what you're going to set up. You've been doing that. You've been doing all of that. And in your topic justification, remember, a lot of you have taken on these topics because you've had personal experience with them. Well, use that. Tell a story with that. Use yourself as an example. Not a source, but an example. Okay, and then there are different websites, but there you have quite a bit on Canvas. You don't need to necessarily go into those. And the need step. Okay, so how big is the problem? Is it an individual problem, a state problem, a national problem, or a world problem? Again, if we took the COVID-19, the coronavirus, we would have that, we know where we were going, wouldn't we? Or maybe I only want to appeal on an individual level. I need to know how big my problem is that I'm going to be talking about. How do we solve the problem? So this is the satisfaction step. Are there specific programs we could join? Is it a national effort, international effort? Does it focus on a local solution? For example, maybe making donations to your local food bank. Does that help solve the problem of folks who are having a hard time because they can't go to work? Maybe that's what you want to focus on. How to motivate my audience to action. So this is the visualization step. This is, and like I said, this is happening throughout your speech because you're using emotional appeal, whether positive or negative. So a lot of pathos, emotional appeal can really motivate your audience. And I think when we're talking about something like a virus and people dying or a topic like that, we're talking about a very emotional issue for a lot of folks. Okay, we can use logic in that speech. We could use ethos. We could use all three, and pathos, all three. So how do we, the action step now, how do we implement the solution? That can be in the visualization step I just talked about. It can be in your conclusion. There is a motivational statement. You have to put in a motivation down in your conclusion for this speech. So look at your handout and your outline for this one, because that is a huge part of your outline in your speech, because that's where the final persuasion, where you put all the oomph behind your argument and what you've just presented and why it's so important. You have that last chance to motivate us to do something. Okay. And so that's just what I would suggest too. Some of the things, if you're going to use Monroe's motivated sequence, and perhaps you are, well, look how you can do it. Even though you only have 3 main points, you can still do it. You can incorporate these throughout, even if you're doing problem, cause, solution. But you need to find what will work for your topic and is comfortable for you, and you understand that organizational structure well enough to use it. So your attention could be, drawing the attention to it could be in your introduction, of course, with all those elements. The need could be addressed in your first point. Satisfaction could be addressed in your second point. And visualization could be addressed in your third point. And then, of course, action and visualization or motivation of conclusion. Either way, or you could even do it in both. To me, you're persuading. I want to hear persuasion. I want you to believe what you're talking about enough that you want me to do something, act on something, think a certain way. All right, so this is a little, some of the little housekeeping, but we're going to take some of this with a grain of salt here because we are online, and I know that we have 2 different groups going at a time and all that. So just remember the outline due to your IAs before your final speech date. If it's still 1 week, check with your IA, please. And when you get it back, look at your calendar. When do you need to have that in? Make sure you do receive feedback from those IAs, though, on those outlines. We're not doing it after class right now because we're not in the classroom, but I know that they've been talking to you about getting your draft outlines to them so they can give you feedback before I ever see it. And then you want to meet with them. If it's 1 class period before, whatever it is for your IA group, please meet with your IA for that final speech. Sometimes folks don't show up to that, and it doesn't go well at the final speech because you didn't go in and get the help you needed. Okay, so don't hesitate to ask for help. And the outline that you finally put on there should be a final revised outline. Remember, you know what belongs on those outlines now, so put some attention into that. I will mark those. I won't spend a lot of time reading them if they're nonsensical or they're not formatted. I'll just probably would give you a grade if I don't have enough to give you feedback on, but you should know by now what's required, okay? So references must be APA. See pages 13 to 18 in the handbook. Those may have changed too, but please just go in and look up references just in case there were some changes since I made this to the handbook, because we have shuffled things around, and when we get back in the classroom, this information is going to be a little bit more accurate. So remember, note cards should follow guidelines. Your IA should have been talking to you about this, and your speech should demonstrate that you practiced. All right, so make sure you're meeting your deadlines here for what you need. Don't wait too long, because I'm busy with grading for this class and another class and the whole online thing that I need a little more time. And so if you don't have your topic justification to me, you want it to get it to me and get that out of the way here in the next few days, okay? Depending on when you're speaking, but give yourself plenty of time. I just need to hear from you because you're all scattered now with the internet. And then on your speaking day, you don't need to worry about that. Yeah, you don't need to worry about that. Nothing to make up, no extra credit. I think you know you have to give feedback on things. So that's really basically all that I have for the Persuasive workshop. And I hope that you will take the time to look at both Jennifer Hayes and Rosemary Vohs videos as well, and just get as much information as you can. We all might want something a little bit different, but we're all on this online community together. So we definitely want to make sure that you stay on the right track. Okay, well, that's all for today. So good luck with your final speeches, and I look forward to looking at them. Bye-bye.